Welcome to the Teachers Talkin podcast, hosted by Dustin, Tatroe, and Ghazali, Abdul, Wahab. In this podcast, we discuss all things education and teaching, from innovative teaching methods to challenges to strategies and much, much more. In this discussion or roundtable-based podcast, we bring in educators from all around the world to talk about a variety of education topics so that we can support as many teachers as possible. We want this to be a place of inspiration, personal and professional development, and simply a place where we can elevate education together. Welcome to Teachers Talkin. This is Teachers Talkin. Welcome back. I am Dustin. I'm here with Ghazali, and today we are going to talk about grading. And I'm excited to talk about this topic. 3 seasons here, Ghazali, and we have never talked about what grading looks like or strategies to help teachers with grading, or what the difference in grading is between the United States and Singapore or other parts of the world. So I'm really looking forward to this. And I've also been doing a series on my Teacher Tip Tuesdays about grading for learning and not for labor, so that this all kind of like ties in together. So if you guys don't follow me on the Teacher Tutor, please check me out on, TikTok, Instagram, wherever. It's also on my LinkedIn, but there you'll get a little bit more in depth in my perspectives on grading for equity there. And this is just to kind of connect to that. So I'm really excited today to talk about grades that tell the truth. This is part 1 of 2 parts about grading. And today we're going to really focus around the idea of accuracy and what grades should actually measure and why they often don't measure the things that we want them to. And so just note that this is very much a empathy forward and teacher coach kind of framing, because grading is really one of the most emotional and policy heavy parts of teaching. And we really want to help people to do less grading, but do grading that's really authentic and truly shows what students can do and what they know. So let's start, Ghazali, by just naming the 2 contexts that we are coming from. You teach in Singapore, I'm in the United States, and I want to be able to use those similarities and differences to get clearer on what grades really mean. So, what does grading and assessment typically look like in Singapore for you? And what pressures or expectations shape that?
Okay, so basically for us, we have the primary school system, the secondary school system, then the tertiary education system. So the students coming from the primary school system, they have one high stake exam at the end of their primary 6 education, which is the primary school leaving examinations. So they take one national exam, and from there we have refined so-called our scoring system into 8 bands, from band 1, which is the highest, to band 8, which is the lowest. So this is a significant shift from the older system, which was a rounded number T-score system that compared students against their peers. And at the secondary level, the students at the end of year 4, they take the O-level exams or the N-level exams. And in between, from secondary 1 to secondary 4, we have our year-end exams. Interesting thing is that we took away our mid-year exams. So instead of that, we have what we call weighted examinations in term 1, term 2, and term 3. So WA1, WA2, WA3. And each of these weighted exam usually is comprises of 15% of the total score, so that your year-end exam will not be 100%. Instead, it will be 55%. Yeah, and normally our weighted exams are easier to score. It's meant to help them to do better overall. Yeah, whereas the final year exam, that's when it is really tough, and normally they are tested for the whole paper. Yeah, whereas the weighted exam is only part of a paper, which makes it easier. Yeah, so students really study hard for the weighted exams because they know it's going to help them in the end to do better for the year-end exam, and passing that will help them to be promoted to the next level. Yeah, so roughly I would say that's our exam structure here in Singapore. How about you?
So I just want to make sure that I understand. So 1, Your exams are they're essay based?
Oh, it depends on the subject.
Okay. So some subjects multiple choice, other subjects writing, or
Yeah, so we have like math, science, mother tongue papers, English. English will be essay based, comprehension, short answers,
okay.
even editing exercises.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what do grade books look like outside of those exam pieces? What happens on the in betweens?
I guess you're talking about the weighted assessments, right? So the weighted assessment is calculated as 15%. So
Right?
that's what goes into the grade book. Yeah,
Okay.
you
But
what you call the grade book.
what outside of those goes into the grade book? Or are those the only thing that goes into the grade book?
Yeah, those are the only things that go into the grade book. The rest are all formative.
Oh, so students are only basically only get 3 grades a year?
Four, I guess.
Four? One per
The
term?
WAs, the one per term, and the final year exam.
And that's it. 4 grades.
Yep.
And everything
Four
else they
grades that
do helps them build
are
up to those
recorded.
things.
Yeah.
Interesting. Grading in the US is very, very different from that. So, number one, grading varies not even from state to state, but often from school district to school district. In my state, in Illinois, students are working towards taking the SAT. No, the ACT.
Yeah.
It's shifted over years. It was the ACT, then it was the SAT, now it's back to the ACT.
Yeah.
But that is not something that goes into grade books. Instead, whatever curriculum teachers are using, they use those unit tests, those assignments, those quizzes. So formatives, and then at the ends of units, they would give like a summative assessment, whether that's a unit test or a unit paper or a project, right? But typically in the US, teachers put all of those things into a grade book. And so kids are like accumulating tons of grades. What sounds like you're doing in Singapore is closer to what you experience in the United States at the college level, where you do a bunch of things to build up to 1, 2, 3 big things, and those are actually what your grade is based on. But what
Yep.
I find
So
is that people here grade everything and anything. So if a student does something, it tends to get a grade. And like at my school, teachers have to give 3 grades a week. They have to give 2 effort grades. That might be homework completion or participation in class or doing classwork. And they have to give 1 mastery grade, which might be, it's just some level of independent assessment. But you think about that over a 10, 12 week, term, students are ending with 30 to 36 grades per quarter.
yeah,
And you double that
that's a lot.
and you're talking about, right, 60 plus grades over the course of a semester.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. Interesting.
So what we're trying to do is cut down on grades. So we took away our mid-year exams, yeah, to have less grades, focus more on skills. But when you do the skills, you may get a grade, a score, but that score doesn't mean anything in the sense that it is not recorded as part of the important grade that will determine whether you get promoted or not. It's just a score to so that you know where you are. If this had been a real exam, yeah. So that's more of what the score is meant for, formative.
That's really interesting. We have such a totally different system from one another, but I like what you're
Mm.
doing. That makes a lot of sense to me. And it seems like that would be more equitable for students too.
It's because of the high stress level, because of our exams, the high stakes. In fact, it is so high stakes that we recently, the minister mentioned that there may be a review of the way the exams are done. That means to even reduce further the stress load on the students.
Interesting. Tell me more about that. Like what makes them so, is it just that because there's only so many that it's really high stakes, or, and what are they thinking about when they do that kind of a review? What are they thinking about shifting? What might that look like?
Well, it's because of the way that schools, for example, the parents would want their child to go to the best schools. So, in order to get to the best schools, you need to get the higher scores or the higher bands to get into those really good schools. So, what happens is that we have a booming what we call tuition industry. Our tuition industry is almost like $1 billion worth or more now. Yeah, so the students, after school they go for extra tuition. They go to tuition centers. They may even have, if they can afford it, private tutors to help them do better in math, science, English, mother tongue, so that they can score better in the high stakes exams and then go to well a better school in that sense. Yeah, and then if you get to a better school, it's all about the prestige. I guess this is like your private schools and public schools in America. Yeah, so the prestige of where you come from matters as well.
Hmm.
And of course, those schools will have more resources to produce, the results at
Okay.
the higher stakes exams. And then it goes, there's a cycle there. So we're trying to minimize that in that sense. Now, what we feel is that we want all schools to be good schools.
Hmm.
Yeah, rather than you have such a disparity in the prestige level, I would say, of the different schools.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's true that, like, private schools in the US, they tend to have more funding, not because of government money, but because of the tuition that people pay to send their kids there.
Yeah.
Whereas our public schools are government funded schools, and depending on, like, taxes pay for public schools, right? So our public schools get some money from the federal government and they get some money from the state government. And the money that you
Oh,
get from the state government or the local governments depends on the neighborhood that your school is located. So cities that have a lot more money pay more in taxes to their school districts, which in turn gives the schools more money for the resources and whatnot. Your schools that are in major cities, so like when you think about major cities like New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, right? Those inner city schools don't don't have the same kind of money and resources that more suburban schools have, because they have more kids and less money to do things with. So
I see.
it's definitely is interesting, and for sure kids who are able to afford more private tutoring and supplemental programs outside of school do tend to do better on those major exams, which obviously you need to do if you want to get into college. So,
Interesting.
yeah, these dynamics are really
So
interesting.
yeah, man. Then if you're grading so much, how does that affect your workload, and what does it teach your students to care about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, look, for me, I think it took me a long time in my career to realize that I was grading just like everything that students were ever doing. And I think that is a mindset that our students and our teachers have. Like, it sounds to me like your students don't care as much about grades as they do learning. Would that be accurate to say?
Not really. I think they do still care about the grades because usually when you return the papers, all they want to see is the grades. They want to know how well they did. Yeah, but I guess they care more about the final grades that they will get the exam grades, and that is what they look out for. Yeah, but whereas if you return a paper which is more of testing the student's skills, right, and you don't put a grade there and you give a feedback instead, which is what we want because we want them to improve using
Mm-hmm.
the feedback, so that will be more effective in that sense. But sometimes they will just they still want to know what if we had done this in the exam, what grade would we have gotten? It's
Sure.
something that they naturally want to know. Yeah.
Sure. See, that makes sense to me because like you always want to have a measurement of like, how am I progressing, right?
Yeah.
For our students, it seems that like most students that I've dealt with, they don't care. They only care about the outcome. They only care about the grade, but they don't necessarily care about what it takes to get to that place. It's how can I get the highest grade possible by doing the least amount of work. It seems to
Mm.
be my experience. And
Mm.
we do so much work to get to the assessments that the mindset is, since I did something, I should be graded on that thing. And so what that does is it
Mm.
creates a ton of work on teachers because
Yeah.
everything we give kids, we feel like we have to look at it, we have to give feedback, we have to put a grade to it, right? And we have to put it in a grade book. And it
Mm.
took me a long time into
Mm.
my career to stop doing that because I was like, look, when you go out into the real world, and I'll just take like athletes and performers as an example. A basketball player is not graded on the things that they do before they get into game time action. An actor doesn't get graded on or judged on the things that they do to prepare before they film a movie or film a TV show or go on stage, right? A musician doesn't get judged on all the work that they put into and learning their instrument and practicing their instrument. They get judged on the performance when they put on a concert or a show. And that's kind of what I see when it comes to like teaching and learning too, is we're grading students on all these things that they're doing to practice skills and then also on the performance. But really, they should be practicing skills, getting feedback on that practice, but really only graded on the demonstration of independent mastery, which you're doing in some sense in Singapore. It's in large gaps where they're major assessments. Ours are on smaller assessments by units of teaching, you know, but I would believe that if I give a quiz at midway points that are leading up to a major assessment, those would be things I would put in the grade book, right? Anytime
Mm.
I'm asking a
Yeah.
student to show me independent demonstration of learning, those are the things I want to put into the grade book. But any of the times that they're just practicing things, like I don't believe homework is something that should go into a grade book because homework should be practice work and students shouldn't be judged based on the behavior of doing or not doing a homework assignment. Especially because with something like homework, you don't know why a student doesn't do homework. It could be laziness. I think that's what a lot of teachers jump to, that conclusion that it is laziness, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes those students have struggles at home. They don't have a quiet place at home, or they don't know what they're doing when they get a homework assignment, or they have to babysit. Like they have to go to work to help provide for their family. Like, there's so many things
Yeah.
that kids do, or they go, or maybe they're athletes and they play a sport after school. And by the time they go to school all day and then play a sport and they go home and have dinner, like where's the time to unwind? Because you also have schoolwork to do, right? Like there's so many factors, and that's just one small thing. But I think that's where I am really trying to push educators to think about what are the things you're grading. It doesn't mean don't look at the work that students are doing. Do that. Provide them with feedback. But not every single piece of paper that a student writes on needs to equate to a grade that's in the grade book. But that's what tends to happen in the US.
Okay.
So,
Sounds interesting. So what happens to these grades in the grade book?
what do you
What is
mean?
it used for?
Mm,
What do you use those grades for?
I mean, ultimately, students get a grade at the end of every semester, and they're not graded on that big standardized assessment, like in this case, the SAT. Now, at my schools, we do midpoint checks. Like we do what we call interim assessments. So we do a quarter one, quarter two, quarter three assessment with at least at the junior level. Then you take your main assessment in quarter four, which is your standardized thing. But Those
Yep.
are not things that go into our grade books. They're checkpoints to be like, are the things that you're doing in class helping lead up to success on this exam, right? But what they're actually graded on is all the things that they're doing in class to lead up to the exam. So our students build up all these points over time, and their report card happens at the end of semester 1 and at the end of semester 2, where it's this accumulation of all the work that you have done along the way, instead of only based on end results. So at my school, for example, we ask our teachers to provide at least 3 grades a week. Our grade books are weighted. So we have effort grades, which essentially is non-mastery. It's like completion of things. It's like participation of things. It's doing your classwork. It's doing your homework. It's doing the practice work, essentially. These are supposed to be low point grades, mostly helping students build upon their skills. A lot of that focuses on soft skills and organization and things of that nature. But our grade books are weighted that is worth 40% of a student's overall grade. And then we have mastery assignments, which are the things in which students are showing independent demonstration of learning. And those are worth, what did I say? I said efforts are worth 40%. Efforts are worth 30%.
40%.
Masteries are worth 60%. And then a semester final, that's a teacher created test or paper or project, right? It's the culmination of all of the learning over the semester. That's worth 10% of a student's final grade. So our students are graded on effort, mastery, and a final culmination of a semester. But when you think about that and you give 3 grades a week over the course of a semester, you're talking about students having 60 plus grades in the grade book. So you asked me about like teacher workload. That's a pretty heavy workload, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And it forces students to like constantly be doing something that matters. Because everything matters when you're putting everything into a grade book.
Yeah.
Instead of building a habit of learning and practicing to demonstrate, and then getting feedback to improve, and then practicing, and then demonstrating.
I see.
So, yeah, we have all these questions prepared, and now we have such a different system. I don't even know where to take it from here. What do feedback loops look like for you, since your kids are constantly working towards major assessments?
Okay, so for me, because I teach English, so our feedback look for, like, for example, essay writing. So students have portfolios where they keep their work, and then they get feedback based on their writing skills for and then the improvements, the revisions, and the editing. Yeah, and then they get a final grade to see where they are at. That we don't record those grades, and then they will sit for their weighted assessments, and those are the grades that we record. So they know that those are the important exams. So they get to revise back what they've done during the term to prepare for that particular examination or standardized test. Yeah, so that they have the best chance to perform during that exam. Yeah.
So, when it comes to, since you're doing a lot of work, but limited grading, but to get to major things, how do you go about helping students how do students know that they are progressing? Like, what is the criteria that you use as a teacher, or that teachers in general in Singapore use? What kind of criteria do you use to help provide that feedback to help students know that they are on the right track as they start progressing towards those major assessments?
So for like my school, because with the students that will be sitting for the O level exams, so the O level exam rubrics are freely available online. So we use that in our grading, and we use the same vocabulary, the terms within the rubrics to explain to the students. Look, you need to improve in your organization skills, your format, your vocab, your spelling, grammar. So these are the exact terms that I also use in the rubrics, so that
Okay.
we can have a common language among the teachers, and the students also understand where we're coming from. Yeah, so I guess that's the important bit of standardization that we have.
What what do those rubrics look like? Like, are they? There's so many different versions of rubrics. So I'm curious, are
Yeah.
they point based? Where, like, let's just say that the rubric has grammar, vocab, organization. Do each of those
Yeah.
have, like, does grammar, is it just like it's grammar and you can either do these things or you cannot do these things? Or are there levels of grammar? Like, would you say that if you use grammar in 100% and there's no errors or whatever, that's like a 5 out of 5. But if you have some errors, it's like a 4 out of 5. Like, what does that look like? And then does it total up to just 100 points by the end? Or yeah, what does it look like for you?
Yeah, so we have like bands. So from band 1 to band 5, and then we have columns. For each column, we have one column for maybe grammar, another one for organization, another one for formatting, or so it's in those different categories. Yeah, so it's like a matrix. Yeah.
Okay. And then what are the
And
bands?
it's so the bands are more general statements, like largely fulfilled, or fulfilled to a large extent, or fulfilled to an average extent, or very higher. Those higher levels will be highly capable, competent in this particular area of vocabulary, for example.
Hmm.
Then you can put tick in those boxes, and you can roughly average it out and see which band the student is at that moment lah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I used to do my rubrics, I think, were very similar, where my bands were, again, I had to put things out of points ultimately, but
Mm,
I tried to link my points to a particular band. So let's just say my category, I used 5 point categories. So 5 in a grammar category would mean you mastered grammar, whereas a
mm,
4 would be that you're proficient with the grammar. A 3 would mean that you are developing with grammar.
yeah,
The
yeah,
the 2 would be that you are, you know, I can't remember exactly what my language was now that I'm coaching, but
yeah. But
and then
yeah, it's roughly like
my
that. Yeah,
1 was kind of the floor, or a 0 would be the
yeah.
floor. So like that was kind of like my bands. And then each thing that I wanted to grade within it, for me, especially also as an English teacher, it was like your thesis statement and your introduction, and it was your evidence, your analysis, your grammar, your organization were all components of a singular rubric for like an essay. But then I would use each of those
Mm.
singular components off of that rubric to then teach, so that I was using that same language that I was going to grade them on to what we were doing in the classroom.
Yeah, yep, that makes sense.
So then do your students use, like, do you teach those rubrics in school? Do you teach your students how to use them in order to be successful?
Yes,
And how do you go about doing that?
yes. So we actually do peer marking as well. So the students actually can look at the rubrics and then grade their friends' papers, and then later on compare with what the teachers gave, and to see how closely, it's more of like a benchmarking exercise. So it helps them to see what they need to do to reach the higher levels of the band. Yeah.
And how do you go about teaching students to do that work? Like, I love that. And I think that's a great practice. How do you build the capacity for your students to be able to learn and understand rubrics and to use them to not to self score as well as peer score? Like, how do you build that capacity?
So it's used frequently. And firstly, is the frequency. So we always look back to the rubrics of the exams, because that's important. They'll be sitting for the exam, so they need to know how the examiners will be marking those papers. So the frequency is one. Secondly, is the expertise of knowing what does a band one look like, what does a band two look like. So that's when modeling comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and even using of standardized papers, so that they can see, okay, if their friend wrote like this, I would have the teacher would give them a band 1 or a band 2. If your friend wrote it like this, you will get a band 3 or a band 4. And then using that, they can compare with their own work or their friend's work. So it's
Okay.
all a lot of this comparison.
So it sounds like there's a lot of exemplars and then using exemplars to check to yours and your peers so that everybody is kind of like aligned and on the same page.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that's best practice. Having an example of what you want your students to produce, I think is best
Yep.
practice. Now, what's interesting is I come across a lot of teachers who don't use rubrics. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
in my early years as a teacher, I didn't have rubrics. It was not something that I was taught in my, when I was getting my degree to be a teacher. Like nobody ever really talked about how you go about grading. This is
Mm-hmm.
just what you do, right? And so when I was originally grading student work, it was very arbitrary. It was very subjective because I would take a stack of essays home and I'd start grading and I'd be giving feedback. And then I'd be like, this is pretty good writing. I would call this an A, right? Like it's a 93%. And I'd read another one. I'd be like, okay, this one's not quite as good as that one, but it's still pretty good. It's probably like an 88. And I started comparing student papers to one another and coming up with my own kind of percentages on like what I feel that grade was. Like that was kind of my early years of teaching because I didn't know any better. When I started using rubrics, it saved me a lot of time because I wasn't comparing. Because what I found was when I was just kind of comparing essays is I started grading harder and harder and harder because I'd see similar patterns of mistakes happening across student papers. And so like the further I got into my grading, the more that I would be like, I'd get frustrated. Wow, they're still doing this. And so a paper that I would have given a B on at the beginning of my grading was now getting a C or a D later in my grading because I was getting frustrated seeing those same patterns over and over, right? It like my bias was completely going into all of my grading. When I started
Yep.
using structured rubrics, it took all of my bias away. So it saved me time because I had very specific things to look for instead of only basing it off of my own example and then basing it off of each other's, right? And it allowed me to then be more consistent in my grading as well and to give stronger feedback to students because I could target very specific areas and be like, hey, you're mastering writing a strong thesis and a strong claim, but you're really struggling in analyzing the evidence to support that. And I could really target very specific things through the use of those rubrics. Have you found the same?
Yeah. Yep. So it's the usefulness of the rubrics are very important because uh, we are given guidance because without it, it like you say, the bias takes over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because sometimes we get frustrated or we're not in a good mood when we mark. Yeah, so it's something that's useful to have, I guess. Yeah. If the school requires homework or participation, non-mastery of, and mastery of grades, what's the best way to keep that work simple, quick, and low impact so it doesn't overpower the academic grade?
Yeah, I mean, look, if for us, if your school requires that you give homework or requires that you give participation or non-mastery grades like my school does, I recommend that you're really mostly looking at those things for completion. It doesn't mean not giving feedback, but like, did the student give an effort, an attempt on doing that work? But I think for one, when it starts with homework has to be practice work. If you're giving students anything to take home that's not something that they have previously learned, then you're not actually setting the students up for success to do anything away from the classroom. So really homework shouldn't even be it shouldn't even be like, we didn't finish this thing today, so now it's your homework. It should be, I taught you this skill today and now I want you to go home and practice that skill. And then maybe we're going to assess it tomorrow, or maybe we're going to come back tomorrow and talk about the things that you didn't understand and fill in the gaps or something like that before. I assess you over it. But I think if your homework is anything more than something for students to practice, it shouldn't be homework. I mean, I think about that a lot because I know that at the college level, you're going to have to do work outside of class. Like, it's a given. And I know in the real world, there's things you have to do to do your job well and to prepare. But students have 6 or 7 different classes, at least at the high school level. But I mean, even at the elementary school level, students have 6 or 7 classes. They just have them with one teacher instead of shifting teachers. And if you're giving them homework for each subject, that's a lot of homework. That's a lot of things that a student has to go and do after they leave school,
Yeah.
right? Like, even at an elementary level, if I give a student some math problems to practice and a short reading assignment, like, that's still at least 2 subjects to go home and practice before the next day. And at the high school level, if I'm a student and I get homework in all of my classes, that's a hefty amount of work to do overnight. And if I'm also somebody who participates in extracurricular activities, clubs, sports, whatever, maybe I have a job, maybe I have to babysit my brothers and sisters when I get home, right? Like, there's so many things that happen once school ends for the day that how can we expect students to go home and do a load of work that's connected to all of their classes? Like, it's not realistic. And it really, quite frankly, then tells students that they can't have a life outside of learning. And I don't think that should be the case. And so that's why I say that, like, if homework is anything more than practice, really, you shouldn't be given it. And if it is practice, then it doesn't need a grade attached to it. And so if you have to give it as a grade, it should come back and you should be like, oh, you did it or you didn't do it. Like, it should be that simple, and it should be worth very low points. So when I was doing homework, it was a 5-point grade, and you either did it and you got a 5, or you didn't do it and you got a 2.5. I wasn't even about a 0 because I don't know what your circumstances are. I'll give you the F, but I'm not going to give you an F that's so low that as those build up, it's harder for you to achieve success on the things that matter. And same for things like participation or non-mastery. I think those need to be very low point grades if you have to give them. And they should be very simple. You either are or are not participating. You either have or have not completed something. And I don't care. That could be a 0 or a 1, or it could be a 5 or a 2.5. But it shouldn't be that a homework assignment is out of 25 points. And then if you didn't do it, you got a 0 out of 25. Like, that is already communicating something to a student that it doesn't need to communicate, because it says that because you didn't do something, your overall grade is going to be impacted. And I don't believe that behavior should impact grade. I believe that grades should be a demonstration, or should be a showing of what students can demonstrate, what students can do, and that their behavior or their lack of time management or their lack of organization, those things should not play a role in a student's overall grade, because those are not demonstrations of learning. So if you have to give them, but make them quick. Something else I did in the classroom was I didn't grade practice work. Students would bring it up, show me that they completed it, and then I would give them access to an answer key so that they could check their own work, and then they could see how they did. And if they did well, they would move on. And if they didn't, they could either go to their peers to help them and, like, fill in the gaps, or they could meet with me and I would help them and fill in the gaps. So they could self-assess, identify their own gaps, and then practice, so that then they could get ready for the actual demonstration of learning over that thing. And I did as much live grading on the spot as I possibly could to also help me from having to take work home and grade it, which I know is one of the major pain points of teachers in the US, is the amount of things that they take home to grade because they don't have time to grade during the day, which I understand. When you're grading everything that students do, there's never enough time, and you're always going to take it home. But when you start limiting the things that you're putting in the grade book, it helps a lot.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So from that formative perspective, right? Like I feel like I'm talking a lot because we do things so drastically different.
Yeah.
How do you use like your everyday learning, your everyday formative and feedback cycles with students to have them motivated to do well? Like, how do you keep your students moving from day to day? Because my fear is in the US, if we told students, you're only going to be graded on this thing, they wouldn't do anything leading up to that thing. A lot of students wouldn't do anything to lead up to that thing. We have a lot of kids who like refuse to do just kind of like everyday stuff. I have even seen students be like, I'm not taking this quiz to a teacher because I don't want to.
Mm,
I don't feel like it today or whatever. There's a lot of like apathy and lack of care and trying in a lot of situations. And I'm not here to say that that's everybody or everywhere. But I also know that's not only my experience.
yeah.
So how do you with like how does your system work in building motivation, independence, and ownership with students when they only have 4 grades a year?
Yeah, so I guess we do have those issues as well. I mean, you have it everywhere, but because we show how the things that you do are closely related to each other, so they can see within the curriculum, they need to know this skill first before they can do another thing and
Mm-hmm.
another thing and another thing. And if they fall behind, then they have to attend remedial lessons. So they don't really like that as well. So then, it's something that they see a purpose to doing
Mm-hmm.
to help them get to where they want to be and get them ready for the actual standardized tests. So when they know that, oh, what I'm doing today is going to be tested later on in the standardized test, so it's a skill that I need to learn, so they will naturally put in the effort, hopefully, to do that piece of work. But of course, sometimes life just happens, and the students may not be in the right mindset to do a piece of work. Then that's where your teacher skills come in, and your teacher student relationship really matters a lot.
Do you ever have kids who have to go to like remedial classes or
Yeah, yeah.
remedial tutoring and then be like, I'm not going to do that, and maybe they don't show up, or what's that look like?
Well, I mean, if they don't show up, then we have no choice. We have to call the parents. So we bring the parents into the picture,
Mm-hmm.
so that and we can also understand what's going on. Maybe it could be a home environment issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then normally when you bring the parents into the picture, they will toe the line. Yeah, because then they're getting the the I guess the attention that they need at home by their parents, and then they come to school, and then they get the attention they need from the teachers. So I guess they get the double attention. Yeah. So normally when the school and the parents work together, you will see the students move.
Do you ever have problems with not being able to get the parents involved? Where like you can't get in touch with a parent or a parent won't come in or
Oh yeah,
can't come in, or and how do you
yeah, yep.
work around that? Like when you don't get the level of parent support even though a student needs it, how do you work around it?
Yeah, so that sometimes it could be an issue that it could be a financial issue. It could be the somebody sick at home, or even they're out working. So there are many different issues that come into play to stop parents from being more involved with their kids, and that is something that we also face. And also one thing I notice is that if the student is not doing well for one particular subject, they're probably not doing well for other subjects. And as a parent, imagine if you're getting a call from your math teacher, your science teacher, your English teachers, all calling, to tell you, hey, your kid's not doing well. After a while, you just stop answering, right? Because
Absolutely.
you can't deal with it. Yeah. So that's natural reaction. So that is when the school will have to come in. We have our counselors to talk to the child, to deal more with the child's behavior in school, where we have the influence and the ability to do so. Yeah, so we do what we can, I guess. Yeah.
Would you say that that is common occurrence? Like, what percentage of your students would you say fall into that kind of a category where where you're struggling to be able to work with the home and your counselors kind of step in to help?
It depends. I guess different schools will have a different percentage. Depends
Hmm.
on the quality, I guess, also of the students that go to that school.
Hmm.
So if it is a private school, independent school, neighborhood school, the kind of school that it is, and the kind of students that is there. So, and also it could also be an issue where the child is maybe in need of special attention. So they need to speak to the counselor more than the teacher, who's better or more capable, in dealing with certain issues. For example, maybe it could be a ADHD issue or a dyslexia issue, Yeah. So it all depends on what the background is. I can't say for sure like how many percentage wise in terms of the students' numbers, but I guess it's still something that is manageable within our own school system,
Hmm.
because you will have the counselors doing their part, you will have the teachers doing their part, you have year heads, you have student welfare committees, you will have discipline masters coming in as well. So in terms of support, I think there's a lot of support being put in place to help the students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about just your group of students,
Mm.
do you have many that go through all of those levels of support? Is it one or two? Is it half? Like when you think just of your own experience?
Oh, from my own experience, it won't be half. It won't be like
No, I mean
50% of the student.
I'm
That will
exaggerating, but
be yeah. It won't be half. Maybe two or three. Yeah, per class.
how
Yeah.
many how many kids do you have in a classroom?
So that varies. So we have classes as big as 40, or we have classes as small as 25. So that varies on the subject and whether we have enough teachers to split a class, for example. Yeah.
Wait, wait,
So that
wait,
depends.
wait, wait. You have classes
Hmm.
as big as 40?
Yep. Yeah.
How many teachers in that room?
One.
One teacher to 40 students?
Yeah.
And does that in Singapore, do you guys see that as a problem or it's common?
I would say that it's pretty common. The range could be, from like, I would say from 35 to 40 is a common number. Yeah, although not all classes are that big, you also have classes which are split because you have enough teachers to split them. So they are banded in that sense. Then you will have maybe about 20, 25 students
Okay.
split into two. Yeah. So it depends. And these classes that, let's say if there's a class of 40, it could be a what we call a G3 class. A G3 is our express, or our the higher ability students. So
Okay.
you won't have much of disciplinary issues in those kind of classes. So then you put those students together so that they can learn better and move faster. Yeah.
So then so your classes are not necessarily mixed abilities then. They're grouped by their bands.
They are grouped by their bands. Yeah. Yeah. But
What about
what we're trying to do now is that the form classes are mixed. So we have G1, G2, G3 in a form class.
okay.
Yeah, but when they go for their subjects, they'll go into their different bands. Yeah.
What about diverse learners and special needs students? Like do they get intermixed in?
Yep. Yep. They do get mixed in. Yeah.
Okay.
So because we are into inclusivity, so they do get mixed in, and the teachers are trained to a certain extent to handle the special needs students.
So like you get special training to do that, or when you have those students, you have another teacher that's with you who is specially trained. Like you all get specially trained, or what?
Yeah. Yeah. So for example, for me, I've gone for my training long ago. So I'm
Hmm.
considered a teacher counselor, and I specialize in autism. So when I did my training, I could choose between autism, dyslexia, or ADHD. Yeah.
Okay.
So I chose autism. Yeah.
Okay.
So other teachers would choose other specialization, and then they will be trained in that area to deal with those kids, and those who are of maybe exhibiting more challenging behaviors, then that's where we have our special needs officers coming in to assist. Yeah. So it's like what we always say, it takes a village to raise a child. So it's like a lot of resources put in place, yeah, to support these students.
Interesting. And you feel like having that large class size it's manageable for you?
Sometimes we do feel the stress of it, because imagine if you're marking an essay, you're marking 40 scripts for every piece of work that you give,
Mm-hmm.
and that takes a toll. Yeah, so that's when you have a lot of English teachers, for example. The marking load is tremendous,
Yeah.
because one piece of work and you get back 40 is no joke. Yeah, so I guess it's been our system for quite some time, so we cope with it as best as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I developed my AI feedback chatbots to help me with the feedback of
Mm,
my students. Yeah.
yeah. How many class periods do you have? Like how many total
Uh,
students do you have? Like I like if you have 40 in one particular class, like do you only
mhm.
work with those 40 students or
No,
I didn't think
no.
so.
So I teach different levels. Yeah,
Okay.
I teach Sec 1, Sec 2. I practically teach the whole spectrum: Sec 1, Sec 2, Sec 3,
Okay.
and Secondary 4
So how
students.
many
Yeah.
total students do you have roughly?
Wow. Total students would be more than 100.
Yeah, I mean at a high school level
Yeah.
here, it would be pretty common
Mhm.
for you to have, 120 students
Yep.
every,
Around there. Yep.
across each day.
Yep.
And you have the same.
Yep.
Okay. It's really interesting to me because one of the things that gets talked a lot about in the US is class sizes.
Mm.
And people think that anything over 25 is too large, that it's not manageable, that you can't do it. I have had a class as large as 38. That's the largest I've ever had. And
Mhm.
it was hard. It was really, really hard.
Yep.
And I did not have in that particular class, I did not have a secondary teacher with me, but like most of my classes were above 30, and I just found ways of managing, but that's where it was important for me to limit what I was grading for that exact reason.
Yeah.
And even when you talk
Yep.
about grading essays, I really shifted even the way that I was teaching the essay structure so that I was grading the components of their essay and giving feedback along the way. So by the time I actually got the final version of the essay, I actually had already approved a large majority of it. And I was really only reading it for organization and grammar by the end because I had already approved their thesis. I had already approved their evidence. I had already approved things
Yep.
because I was using my
Yeah.
rubric along the writing process to be like, let me see what you've
Yeah.
done so far. Here's feedback. Go revise, right? Instead of doing a revision after a final draft, we were doing revision drafts like throughout. And I was using that
Yep.
rubric to grade them throughout so that I had less grading at the end. But that's not how I was doing it originally, right? Like originally I was
Yeah.
getting 120 essays and then I was grading 120 essays at the end of it all, right?
Yeah. That's not manageable. Yeah. Yeah. Same here. Yeah. So that's why we have our portfolios,
Yeah, and I
writing
like the I
portfolios.
like the idea of students building a portfolio to show that they're
Mm.
prepared for
Yeah.
the term exam.
Yep. And give them something to revise for the paper.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they'll say that, well, there's nothing to study for English.
Interesting. Well, this was a really interesting first conversation around grading. It definitely
Yeah.
did not go where I thought it was going to go because we do things so different from one another
Yeah.
in the United States from in Singapore.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. So, if you as we close this episode out, what would
Mhm.
you give people as one mindset shift or one action that they could take
Mm.
to make grading more accurate?
I wouldn't say about making it more accurate. I would say more of a mindset shift, that believing that, that formative practice needs to be graded to matter. I think that needs to shift from like learning to performance, because if not, you will be discouraging risk taking and authentic self reflection, for example, of students. So I would prefer that give the feedback, effective feedback that the students can improve. And that is what I believe is in the spirit of what formative assessment should be, rather than giving a grade and then the students only care about the grade in the end, but not the skills that they need to master in order to achieve those grades. So I guess you need to have a balance of the formative and the summative, but put more emphasis on the formative because that's where real learning takes place.
Yeah, and I largely agree with that. I think that I wish that the grade books at my school weren't effort and mastery. I wish they were formative and summative. I really don't think that effort should be something that goes into grade books, because your GPA should not be reflective over whether you do or don't do something. It should be reflective over what you can and cannot do. And I think that those are two different things, whether it's you're talking about you did the thing, you tried, and so it's completed, so you get a grade. I don't really buy into that. I don't think that like late work should count against a student. I don't think that not doing homework should count against a student. I don't think that not participating in class should count against a student. Like, I really believe that grades should truly only reflect learning and nothing more. You either can do something or you can't do something, or you're in between being able to do something. And so I wish our grade books looked more like grades for formatives and grades for summatives. But I agree, the formatives actually is where most of the weight should be and where all of the feedback should be. And the summative should be, hey, you built up to this thing. But that classwork, and that's would be my mindset set shift for people, or my action that people can take, is stop grading practice work. It is practice work for a reason. You should look at it. You should give students feedback. You should do something with it, but you should not take the time to grade it and put it into a grade book. Any level of demonstrating that learning is the only thing that should go into the grade book. And so that should be the formatives. Like, you should be practice, 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 take a quiz that's leading you to the bigger, larger assessment. And that quiz is what should go in the grade book, not the practice work that led you there. And so that would be the thing that I would push people towards, is really think about what are you grading, and only grade the things that are showing an actual demonstration of learning. And if students are not demonstrating learning, don't put it in your grade book. Save yourself the time, but use the feedback and go through feedback loops. So in our next episode, I think we'll talk a lot more about feedback loops and other strategies to use in the classroom to prevent you from having to put everything into the grade book all of the time. But this was a really fun and interesting conversation around grading.
Yeah.
I didn't realize we were so different in what we do in our practices. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, everybody, once again, and as always, thank you so much for being here. I hope that this was an enlightening and interesting episode for you. And hopefully you're looking forward to our next episode on grading, where, like I said, we'll really talk a lot more about grading without burnout. So feedback loops without paper piles, late work without negotiation,
Wow.
reassessment systems that are manageable. And
Right.
as always, like, subscribe, leave a review, share the podcast with your fellow educators. And thanks for listening, and keep on teaching. Bye, everybody.